with no judgment whatsoever, right? Again, I'm not here to, it's not a moral thing. I'm just talking about what I do is I look at things through the lens of biology, and in particular through neuroscience, but some other fields as well. We have to take a step back, and now knowing what we know about testosterone and dopamine and all these things, and ask, what is pornography doing to the brain? Well, first of all, it's triggering the release of dopamine, and in the short term, testosterone, by the observation of sex, not actually engaging in human contact. So think about the young brain being significantly more plastic and willing to rewire than the adult brain. Absolutely, there's no question about it. It's hyperplastic. Yeah. And of course it can rewire again, but you think about somebody who engages in a lot of porn watching, right? Watching porn, and that person is getting dopamine and testosterone increases by observing sex and not actually by engaging in human contact. So that's concerning, right? And obviously the people vary, but it should come as no surprise that a lot of these people have trouble with romantic interactions when they do happen, right? Because their brain isn't conditioned to respond to those, right? And there's variation there, I'm sure. And these are private matters, so there aren't good data because there aren't laboratory experiments that you could do on this sort of thing that someone will probably do those experiments eventually. But also dopamine seeking is what triggers the increase in testosterone. But as we just talked about it, with repeated dopamine seeking or triggering of dopamine release, it starts getting diminished. So pretty soon that behavior is not causing the release of testosterone. Now people are just doing it compulsively to try and get some little droplet of dopamine out of their brain. I personally think that porn and the availability of porn is a real detriment to the developing brain, especially to the developing brain. Yeah. Now, it sounds like you rescued the behavior, and it takes some discipline, right? I imagine, and it's one of those things that it's also anxiety-less compared to dating and relationships where people are vulnerable on both sides and have to negotiate things like, consent and timing and, and communication and all the things that are really hard to do, but are essential to do. That's key. So I think pornography is a serious issue. And because of the way that it taps into these very primitive systems, it's as serious in my mind as some of the other drugs of abuse, like the opioid crisis. And talked about cell phones. You ever notice that when you get on a phone and you're scrolling Instagram, it's like a lot of fun, like this stuff is cool, you're seeing people, and then sometimes you're on there and like, this doesn't feel good, but I'm doing it anyway. Yeah. I'm just doing it. That's exactly how people talk about their drug use. That's exactly how people talk about alcohol use. That's exactly how people talk about gambling. You imagine this high, but the high doesn't show up, and that's you're dopamine depleted. You need to take some time away from it and then come back and then you can enjoy it again. Now, with pornography, it's a slippery slope, right? There's also a whole aspect of pornography, which is that if people are pursuing pornography and they're not pursuing relationships, there is the potential that they reach their 20s and 30s and they are truly dysfunctional in terms of, look, every species has two major goals: protect the young and make more of itself. Whether or not you decide to have children or not is a personal issue. I personally don't have children. I may someday, but every species protects its young. The maternal aggression is amazing, right? A mother protecting its young, there's nothing like it in the animal kingdom. Actually, that's not triggered by testosterone, that's triggered by estrogen, which is interesting. But the parents of every species try and protect the young, and they try and make more young. This is every species is driven to do that. And you think about what porn and masturbation, these things really are. I'm not calling them sinful. What I'm saying is they are potentially addictive, especially with the availability of pornography. So, beware, just everyone's different, and people have to be careful about these circuitries. You really need to protect them. They are super valuable. And so I would say, in keeping with our theme of, what are the other things to do to support testosterone, would be don't engage. I would avoid pornography, frankly. I really would. I would, maybe everyone's got their threshold for what's too much. For some people, that might be, the number might be 0. For other people, it might be something different, and it's going to vary. I think it's fair to say that whatever problems exist in society today almost certainly existed 100 years ago, but in a different form. Okay? We always think, stress was only there for the saber-toothed tiger, and now there are no tigers, and we got this thing that's really unfortunate called stress. Look, let's imagine this was 100 years ago. Spouses still cheated. People still died. You had physical challenges. There was a question of how, all that stuff is baked into us at a deep level, right? None of those circuits have changed. It's just the circumstances that trigger them change. So I think that 100 years ago, it wasn't cell phones. But you can bet that there were forms of pornography. They were probably more cloistered away. They weren't, as out there. In certain parts of the world, it's still very, very cloistered away, despite the internet. So I think that what's healthy in this domain has never really been defined. This is one of the challenges. We know what an eating disorder is, but what's healthy eating, right? Where do you draw the line? I think given this general theme that relationships are healthy, friendships are healthy, romantic relationships are healthy, and anything that inhibits the pursuit and functioning of healthy relationships is where you have to start saying, wait a second, is this behavior getting in the way?